Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Everything Horror Podcast. My name is Paul Doski, and joining me today is none other than fellow author Ryan Meyer. Ryan, thank you for, finally coming on to the show.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yes, I want to quickly say that within the I think it was like 1 year anniversary of you doing this haunt poem contest that you did the first time around, and somehow you managed to pick me somehow. And then like a year later, it's like, wow, I still haven't even talked to him or like did anything with it except for not really through it, but I put it in like my vault of signatures, and here I am staring at it, and I figured, oh my god, I'm gonna slap myself in the face because why haven't I not reached out to Ryan for an episode? So I figured since October's right around the corner, what a better way to talk to you about it, right?
Yeah, that's perfect timing. And I appreciate you reaching out regardless, no matter the time.
Well, I still feel bad. So if you're a nice dude that actually, for some weird reason, picked me as the winner for your contest that you did, I think it was for the year one anniversary. I have no idea if you even did anything for the second year, but congratulations on the second year, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's funny because I work in book publishing, so I'm really bad at promoting my own book. I spend all day promoting other people's books, and then I was like, oh, I really haven't done much for year two because I'm working on another project. But that's why when you were saying you were slapping yourself for not reaching out to me, I was slapping myself for not reaching out to anybody. Really, I haven't done much more than like a reading here and there, and then I just focus on giveaways and ads and stuff. But definitely more I could have done, but better late than never, right?
Well, I say I want to slap myself, and you probably will want to slap yourself too, like in the same aspect of promoting your book as you were just saying. But for me, I'm like, there's times where I'm like, wow, I haven't gotten any emails. It's just kind of quiet. Like, it's kind of nice, and then it's just like, man, I'm actually kind of bored. Like, come on, people, send me your emails. And then it's just like, why didn't I not ever reach out to him? So, man, I don't know. So anyway, it's good to have you on. And for those listening, we're talking about Ryan's poetry book. It is called Haunt. I'm trying to figure out like if there's more to the title, because I know on the cover here it just said your name and then haunt and then poems. So is it just haunt, or is it like what Amazon says is haunt, a collection of poetry?
No, I mean the title's just haunt, but some in some of the descriptions I put that it's a collection of poems because as opposed to a smaller chapbook or something else, it's not like a collection of like the best hits or anything, because this is my first book, so I wanted to just that's all I really wanted to use as I didn't want to put like necessarily a subtitle or anything. I just thought poems would be cutting it to the chase and saying that's what this is a collection of poems. And that haunt would be the kind of descriptor of what category, these are spooky, these are horror themed poems.
Well, from what I've read a little bit when preparing myself for this, I was almost thinking you could have chosen haunt as a word because you bring up the word haunt a lot, so like haunted and stuff like that. Yada yada. Yeah, I know, but I also know. I think it was like your second or third poem that it was called haunt. So I'm like, well, maybe he did it that way, like most bands. They'll sometimes use a song title or a piece of work or something. So usually that's how it goes. So just out of curiosity, but yeah, I mean, putting it as haunt just because it's spooky, then yeah, I mean, fair enough.
No, you're right. I did name it after the title itself came from the poem in the book called Haunt. Because I figured that was the best way to not only describe the book but also describe the kind of horror that this is described that this is encompassing. We're haunted by our own personal demons, regardless of if we're haunted by real or supernatural demons. In every movie you see someone's haunted by ghosts, but they usually also have other things going on that may or may not be more important to them than being haunted, and that's what that specific poem is about, is someone who's struggling with things, and there are real ghosts going on that kind of take a back seat in the story, which I thought was an interesting way to take that poem.
Yeah, and I'm curious too, because like for it being, I'll just throw it out there. So for those listening, it probably October by now, because what a great way to promote this haunt book of a spookiness time, especially if you're into the poetry vibes, which I adore, because it's always nice to see other people's writing, not just my own. And Ryan has a very interesting way of words, and I only say that because you also seem to have a background for being in a university. Crap. What was the university again? I just had it pulled up and now I can't find it.
Well, I did my undergrad at Southern Connecticut State University, and I was involved with their university press for some time. So that was some of my earlier foray into the publishing world.
So, real quick, Ryan, for somebody like me, a little bit. We talked a little bit like within the year and so on and stuff like that. But for those that don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself. So, like, you said you're graduating from the university here, where you are, and so like, what made you want to be like a first off an author, and you say you published or not publish, well, you technically do like a publishing thing for other people, so I guess like, yeah, so how did Haunt really start?
So, I mean, if I'm describing myself from the start, I started writing poetry a little bit in high school, but I didn't really get super into it until college. I was mostly writing short fiction, and then I had a professor in a creative writing class in college that it kind of just opened the doors to me, not only writing poetry, but I've always loved horror ever since I was a little kid. It was actually my grandmother who let me watch scary movies when I was way too young to be watching scary movies. So I always throw that tidbit in there because I think it's kind of funny that out of anyone in my family, it was my grandma who liked to watch scary stuff. She actually doesn't think half the movies are scary that I think are scary. So she's a lot more hardcore than I am. She yeah, and the teacher that I had was he's great, and he's one of my biggest inspirations. But he told us that he didn't want to see like genre writing. He didn't really want to read about ghosts. He didn't really want to read about vampires and stuff like that. He wanted to read like real people's real stories and real struggles. And I was like, I don't want to write that. I want to write what I want to write. Who cares? But it kind of forced me to think about how people act and, you know, the things people really go through. And so by the time I was done with school, there was a course that I did that was an independent study, and I was able to kind of collect poems of mine to put into a collection, and that's where Haunt kind of started. I had a teacher who, it's funny because she was an older woman as well, and she's one of the best people that I've ever worked with, and she told me that a lot of the poems that I had weren't scary enough. So I was like, all right, I have some work to do. So that was where Haunt started. And now here I am with Haunt done and out there, and I actually work for a publishing company in marketing. So it kind of all came full circle for me.
Very cool.
I know that was a lot of information.
No. That was perfect. I just want to go back and say, because when you mentioned your grandma got you into horror, that's actually kind of funny, because you know what I used to watch with my grandmother? The Monsters.
Oh, nice.
And we used to watch like that and Bewitch, and I'm trying to think if there was like another one, but like, you know, those were, I know, TV shows, black and white, but still, like, you know.
Yeah. I mean, my grandmother raised me on like the Universal black and white monster movies. Like, she had Dracula and the Wolfman, and we would watch those, and the Mummy all the time. And one of her favorites is Creature from the Black Lagoon. So,
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. She's a character. But like when The Witch came out recently, I was like, okay, we got to go see that. So I took her to the movies to see The Witch, and she was like, wow, that was amazing. She didn't think it was scary in the way I thought it was scary, but she definitely really enjoyed it.
You're talking like The Witch from Robert Eggers?
Yeah, that's one of my.
I love that movie.
It's amazing.
It really is, and then it made me shake my head to the horror community, for those that were like trying to say like, this wasn't scary, this isn't a horror film, blah blah blah. It's like you want to sit down and, like, I don't know about you, Ryan, but this was me. Like, when I started to read that stuff, like, you know, it was like, this isn't scary, blah blah blah, what a waste of time. It's like, are you kidding me? It's like, this is perfect. This is like, you know, what are we watching? A family that is struggling because there's a quote witch among them, and it's not really supposed to be scary. Like it is, but it isn't. And like, not in the horror way that we know. The horrorness is just the fact of, what are we watching? A family struggle to, you know, like, fend for themselves, and like everything else. Like, one of the like quotes that I kind of gave people is like, if you don't like this movie, then you must not like history, because that's basically the way I took The Witch. It was almost like a history lesson. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. That was one of the first movies that I watched that where afterwards I kind of said to myself, wow, this director really did his homework. Like, this is kind of like the English literature nerds horror movie, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's close to home because it's, I mean, it wasn't filmed in New England, but it's supposed to take place in New England. And that's,
Yes.
everything that, being here in New England, it's like everything's haunted, everything's witches, and there's a lot of history to it. And I thought that one of the most important things in that movie was not the fact that there was a witch, but the fact that they were scared of the witch they didn't know necessarily existed. It was the fear that lingered above them, and it was also the fear of God too. It was very religious, and it was very, they, like I said before, they had their own things they were struggling with, that where the witch almost not took a back seat, but wasn't the central core of the movie until later on.
Right. And the way they also Robert portrayed each individual animal, with like the rabbit, the goat, and the crow, and then I think is that all of them? I think I almost swear I'm missing one, but maybe not.
No, I think that's I have a witch poster hanging up in my room right now, and there's the 3 animals, so I think you got them all.
All right, sweet. But yeah, each one of those animals represents its own haunted story, is the best way I would kind of say it, in like a weird nerd way, I guess. I don't know. Like we gotta look at the rabbit, for example, real quick. Like, the father tried to shoot the rabbit, but the gun kind of malfunctioned. It's kind of like that's not how it's supposed to happen,
Right.
or that's not supposed to happen, especially when he cleaned it and everything, and so it shouldn't have jammed like it did. With the goat, it's kind of awkward of what happened, especially later on with the other goats.
Yeah.
And then you got this like weird, bizarre, oh god, like illusion, or a hallucination or whatever with like the crow. So it's like really weird. But I mean, that's really the scare aspect before the ending draws near, of basically saying there's witches all around us too.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly.
But yeah, so anyway, getting back to you, there's definitely like a lot of inspiration of movies going on within your poems, for sure.
Oh,
now, now, was there any that actually involved any like personal life from you that I mean, I don't know if you actually believe in like the paranormal and stuff, but like, as far as I've gotten to read, I've just noticed it sounds like it's mainly focusing on monster movies, or making them like your movies per se, or at least like a nice mixture between the two. Of it's kind of like your view mixed with like a monster view.
Yeah, I mean, definitely there's a couple poems in the book that come to mind where I directly drew from inspiration from horror movies. Like the last poem in the book is called Melt, and that one, I think, I mean, it's one of my favorites. That's why I put it as the last poem, and it was like a longer, kind of more of an, I wouldn't call it an epic poem because it's not that long, but it's like a solid 3 to 4 pages in the book. But it's in a cold environment, and it involves an alien, so I definitely drew from The Thing. That's one of my favorite horror movies, but it's similar to the theme that I had going on, where this guy finds this alien and he isn't afraid of it. It's not what's scary to him is this person that he's in love with, that he knows isn't right for him, and he can't have. And I think everyone has experienced that in some shape or form, is loss in a way, like loss of love, and not necessarily loss of someone, but you're yearning for someone who you can't have. And so I had that kind of be the main focus of the poem, even though there is literally a monster in his hut on the lake, and so that's why I want, I do blend reality and fictional inspiration for a lot of these pieces. Like there's a poem called Hum in the book,
Yep,
and
that was a good one.
That's definitely I drew definitely from Carrie for that one about being locked in the closet.
Okay.
So, yeah, so there's little bits and pieces everywhere, and there's a poem in here called Occasionally the Moon, and actually that's one of my favorites because if you read it, there's probably like a checklist. I should probably put an official checklist of all the movies I reference in there. There's like a wide array of movies, from Alien to Independence Day to Poltergeist. So it's one of those like, can you find them all kind of poems. So
nice.
That's something fun to look through.
I also enjoyed, not to cut you off, but
Yeah.
I also enjoyed the one that's called "But You Won't Love a Ghost."
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because that reminded me a little bit, and I'm trying to remember the year it came out, but for some weird reason that reminded me of the movie called A Ghost Story.
I've actually never seen that one. Is that the one with Rooney Mara from Girl with the Dragon Tattoo? I think that's an A24, but I think I know what you're talking about, but I haven't seen that one. So that's interesting.
Yeah, basically that was the one for listeners. That's with Casey Affleck and Rooney Mara. I think that's the one definitely. You're asking.
Yeah, I recognize that one. I have that on my list, but I haven't seen it yet.
Oh my god, I enjoyed that. I mean, it's a little bit of a slow burn, but the message behind that one was like really astonishing, especially if you love movie soundtracks. I would highly recommend a Ghost Story soundtrack. Like my fiance and I purchased the soundtrack, and after the movie and stuff, like we did an episode on a Ghost Story because that's how much we enjoyed it. And then like for the month of October, or whatever, it was like that soundtrack never left our car because that's how much we enjoyed it. Oh, wow. And yeah, I mean, it's just, I find a Ghost Story is like, it comes so close to be hitting your heartstring to the point where it's like, it's kind of like what we were just talking about with The Witch, It's not like scary, but with a Ghost Story, it's like the same thing. Like it's not scary, but the way they did it, they portrayed the story aspect. Because I don't want to say too much, Ryan, but just to kind of give you an idea, is like, as you probably understand, there's was a family, then one of them departed, because otherwise there wouldn't be, a ghost story. But it without giving too much away, is like, you know how the saying goes, is like, if there's a ghost, it's attached to the house. Mm-hmm. So we're literally watching the husband kind of, linger in this house. So we just watch his side of the story, but still, when it comes to like his family and etc. As it plays out, it's just it's like you can't help but feel bad, and it's just one of those things where it's like, wow, like this hits home,
Mm.
cause it makes you think, like if I this is just an example, so let's say I passed away, and my fiance is by herself, and I'm the ghost for the ghost story. It's almost like that. It's like I could still be here even though Tessa can't see me, but
No.
I'm watching her go through her life now without me. You know, that's basically what it is. But then, since I'm stuck with this house, now it's like I'm growing, or I became one with the house.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds really interesting. I'll definitely have to keep that on my list.
Yeah. Hopefully I didn't no, I didn't really ruin it, but there's definitely more to it, but that's definitely the best way I can not spoil it. So
No, I
yeah.
appreciate it. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean I just want to say enough where hopefully it's like, okay, well, at least that explains a little bit of what I want to know. So, you know, take it with a grain of salt for
Right.
how you want to look at it with some people, because I know how people can be very picky nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, I think with so much out there, people are going to find their favorite types of horror, and everyone's always going to say something about everything. But I think there's so many. There's a type of horror movie for everyone, and I think that's what's great about it is there's so many different ways to go about it and to tackle that genre, um, which is really special.
Well, what about you, Ryan? Like, you write, you wrote your poetry book here and stuff like that. You probably must have read, I don't know, countless horror stories, maybe comics or something. But and God knows probably how many horror films and shows that we've seen. Um, Now, is there anything like nowadays where, or do you feel like with the way horror is nowadays, do you feel like it's kind of dry at all, or do you feel like something is missing within horror nowadays?
I wouldn't say necessarily dry. I would just definitely say that not horror is not as. I actually think it's less mainstream now than it was back in like the 70s and 80s. Like you don't see horror movies in the theaters as much anymore. And I can't really speak much to the film industry because I'm not really in that world, but I think it's a lot more indie voices now, and a lot of the bigger productions are remakes, and I think that's I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because we still buy it and we still go watch it, so it's gonna still they're still gonna give them to us. So I watch everything I want to and judge it based on what it is, not based on the things that I already like. I think that's a little unfair to the younger voices who are involved with these projects, and who put a lot of time and energy into them. So, but I guess I don't think I wouldn't say anything's missing. I would just say that there's a lot more. Honestly, I think there's a lot of the horror genre in everything else at this point. Like a lot of the music I listen to, there's a lot of horror influence that I see. like this book, I have a couple poems that are inspired by music and bands that I listen to that have that influence. So I just think that it's kind of permeated every sort of medium, if that makes sense.
Okay, I think I understand like what you mean, but like if you want to elaborate more too on like the music aspect, I guess, of what you're talking, like I get trying to point out just a little bit more.
Yeah, I guess the my favorite example of where music is inspired by horror, but not necessarily horror music. You know, if that makes sense. Like it's not like so. One of my favorite bands is Chevelle, and lately a lot of their music is very horror based. Like Black Phillip from The Witch is on their latest album cover, so there that's a little more out like in your face there, and it's great. It's an amazing album. But one of my favorites songs of theirs is called Highlands Apparition, and it's an acoustic song, and it's a very beautiful and sad song. But when you read the lyrics and you know what the song's about, it's about a haunted house. It's about a house that has a ghost in it, and it's scary. And the words are striking and very visual. And it's something that when you're listening to the song, you're like, this is like beautiful and kind of like heartbreaking in a way, but and I love that where there's like a dichotomy where something's very like pretty and nice to hear or listen to, but what it means and what it's trying to say is a lot darker and a lot scarier. And that's kind of what I went for in this book. I wanted it to flow and have great rhythm and you know roll off the tongue, but it means you know it's they're scary. The images and the things that the words are saying are scary and invoke fear.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. And you said Chevelle
Yeah,
has this
yeah,
new album.
yeah. Their last two albums. The newest album was the North Corridor, and they have like a song about cannibals. They have a song about witches. You know,
Hmm.
yeah. They have a song from a previous album about Ouija boards. So I was like, oh, I'm definitely in with this. I've always loved them, but it's fun to see them doing stuff like that when
Huh.
they you know when they're such a popular band. You know.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I didn't even hear about that, so interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, for something like that, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's the type of stuff I actually enjoy too with music too, where like it doesn't necessarily have to be just horror genre for sure. But I mean, look at all these bands that make a song based off, you know, uh, based off of real, true events. And it could be acoustic, it could be a heavy metal song, it could be one of their slowest, but still, like, if the lyric can hit you in a haunting way of almost like a wake up call of reality, yeah, that's very horrorish to the point where it's like, holy crap. And especially with like what you just said with Chevelle, it's like I remember with Chevelle with what was their hit, Red.
Yeah. Mhm.
And like look at what that song's about. Like that's horrifying of like what it's really based off and stuff like that. And it's just yeah. So I have to check when I get done with this interview. I'm gonna have to look up Chevelle now. So,
Yeah, definitely. You
but
have to let me know what you think.
oh, I will. I'll let you know for sure. And I guess like out of curiosity, Ryan, is so how long did like your book here for Haunt? Uh, did it take you a little bit to write all these, or were these like some of your works that you've had since high school? Because I know you were kind of mentioning that, were this all kind of like a fresh start after or during college?
Some of these poems I had kind of floating around through, I guess, early college. I like I said, I didn't really write all that much in high school, not poetry at least, but I didn't publish it until 2018. So I graduated in 2016. So I had some time to figure out which poems I wanted in the book and which poems, I um, some of the later ones that I crafted were in the book. I have like 5 sort of interludes that are just numbers. The titles are just numbers.
Yep.
And they started as one poem that I kind of worked about and I split it into 5 pieces. So when you read them all together one after another, they're sort of supposed to read as one
One chapter?
Like one continuous poem, like if you put them all together.
Oh.
And it starts with someone feeling a presence, and then by the end it's a much grander scale. Like there's something going on that's bigger than just one person, like oneself. So I won't say what because they're short, so I won't say like what they're about because it'll spoil it. But yeah, it's one of those things where you don't where I was trying to do something cool and have interludes, but also if you put them all together, they make one complete piece.
Now, were there any type of pieces that you have in the book that come to mind where you remember it took you a while or it made you want to rewrite it a few times just because it wasn't really coming out the way you really wanted it to? Or did you just or would there this is like, I guess, a 2 question thing. So would there like any that you had to rewrite a couple times, and then 2, would there actually some poems that were in this book of yours that you actually pulled out because of the fact that maybe it just wasn't quite fitting into the way of the book of how you originally planned?
That's a good question. I would say that applies more to the book I'm working on now, because it's the one I'm working on now actually isn't horror. It's a lot more personal. But I'm trying to think.
I know.
It's tough. Actually, yes, there is one. In the book, there's a poem called "The Gusts of a Tempest," and that I actually workshopped in class at school, and it was a completely different poem. I'm trying to take a look to see what comes to mind. Yeah, so that poem is kind of that one's really based on Dante's Inferno. I don't know if you read the Inferno, but it's kind of like at the beginning he just kind of wakes up and is in some sort of strange forest, and he's being guided by someone, and that's how this poem starts. But originally he wakes up in kind of like an empty wasteland kind of thing, where it's kind of like there's nothingness, and he's just walking through nothingness trying to find his way out. But as I worked on it, I wanted to give it more of a setting and more of a structure, because that way I can kind of play on the idea that there's a lot around you, but you're still, you still lost your way. And it's easier to imagine something that you've seen before, and it's hard to describe something that there's nothing there. You know what I mean? So that one's a lot different than it was when it first started. And I would say there's a couple poems that I pulled out that, not because they didn't fit in this book, but because I wanted to keep this book at a solid amount of poems. I didn't want too many in one book. So I have a couple that are the start of another book of horror poems, but I'm still working on that as well. So I guess I have two projects going on, but one of them is a lot more complete than the other.
Which is your personal one, from the sound of it?
Yeah, it's a lot more like self exploration and just more about I guess fear has a lot to do with that one too. Just like, fear of kind of yourself and trying to figure out your place and everything and dealing with your own mind. So I guess there's horror in that too, but it's not presented as horror genre, if that.
No, I think yeah, it's like a psychological thriller in a way, but
Yeah,
it's more of a personal approach. It's I'm understanding you.
yeah, it's more traditional poetry is what that's the word I've been using to describe it. It's hard to describe poetry, but um, I definitely enjoy the playing with words and playing with structure. Even though all of my poems are free verse, there's no sonnets, there's no uh, numbered anything. But I do like playing with the word at the end of this line is at the end of this line for a reason, and there's emphasis in certain ways that you can't really do in like a novel, for example. You're not focusing on the story by every line and every paragraph. In a novel, you'd be focusing on the plot and the story, whereas in poetry, there's a little bit more to that. And I think that's what's special about specifically poetry. And also, writing novels is hard to me. So, not that poetry is not hard, but it's a different animal completely.
Oh yeah, yeah. Trying to describe the environment, like what the characters see, feel, taste, everything. Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's like trying to like put what the vision of what your protagonist is seeing or however into words. Yeah, no. that yeah. I that's I think why I stick to poetry myself.
Yeah.
It's a lot less complicated than trying to explain the environment, I guess, for sure. I think it's like how you're even wording it too, but I think that's why you'll never see my name come under a novel anyway.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I have so many drafted novel ideas, but
mm,
um, we'll see. We'll see if anything happens with those.
hey, you never know. In 10 years, you might have it, man. You might have your first novel out.
In a perfect world, I would love to have a novel version of the last poem in this book. So we'll see if I can figure that out.
That
There's
would
something
be
there. I
cool.
just don't know what it is.
Well, 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 I mean, you just never know. You just start off small, and then when you need to take that break, just take that break. Because,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, one of the best things that I do too, and I don't know if you do it too, is what I'll do, what I'll call the rough draft, and then I'll let it sit for uh, weeks, months, years, and then I'll come back, try to reread, try to figure out what I was trying to go with, and who knows? Sometimes with a fresh mindset, you can like either make it better, bigger, smaller, even just because like at the time you just felt like you just couldn't quite figure out how to do it. But then now that you let it sit for so long and you came back with that fresh start, it's like, okay, now I'm ready to finish this.
Right. Yeah, that's one of my my rules. to myself as a writer is don't delete anything. Even if you have one sentence in a Word document on your computer and you don't think anything's going to come of it, just save it anyway and keep it. You never know when that one sentence will inspire you to do something, even if it's not something on that document. If it's inspires something, if you want to pull from that for something else, you never know what's going to come in handy and what's going to be that spark, you know.
And I will fully back up what you just said.
Yeah.
I actually have a document that is called unused lyrics. And what I'll do is I'll put whatever I'm supposed to be saying, or trying to figure out what to use it for in quotation. And then I'll kind of line break it. So I'll, like, let's just say something above the one I just put into this new document. So exactly. So, like, perfect example I can give is there was one I wrote this like one paragraph thing one time, and I don't have my book in front of me right now, unfortunately, but it was like a 4 or 5 line little paragraph, and so I just put it under the whole unused lyrics part. So that way, like, if I ever want to come back to this, I can just grab it and throw it into whatever I want it for. Kind of like what you're talking about. So I started writing I want to say it was like my third book. It was called Enemy of Everything. And I want to say that unused lyric that I put into that document of mine ended up becoming part of a piece that I think it was called like Dracula or something. I can't. That's why I wish I had my book with me. But yeah, it became part of a like one of those pieces where you break it down. Like, I forget what they call it, Ryan, but you actually did it, and it's like, you have the title of the poem, but then you have it as like part one, part two, part three.
Yeah, just numbering the sections. I'm sure
Yep.
there's a real word for it, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, there is a word for it. I just can't remember what the terminology is, but yeah, that's exactly what I did though. So, and it played out actually really well, I thought, with the way I used it in between that piece. So just like, oh wow, like the way this actually came to be kind of feels like it was meant to be there. So good. It's like good thing I did hold on to it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's always interesting to see the way different projects work out. It's never the way you think it's going to work out.
No, but then that's the fun of creating too.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Now, I don't want to take away too much more of your time, but like, so is there anything more you'd like to talk to us about your project that you are currently working on? I know you kind of stated a little bit, but is there any more that you'd like to give us a teaser of? I know you mentioned like this personal project of yours that's not really horror, but it's like a personal thing, or you did mention that you kind of want to start like a haunt poetry volume 2, or however you'd like to look at that or something.
Yeah. I haven't told anyone publicly, at least, the name of my next book, but I can reveal it today. It's something I always told myself I was going to do was name one of my books after a Deftones song. So the next book is going to be called Tempest after one of their songs off their not their most recent album, but one of their other albums that I'm pulling the similar themes in terms of a dichotomy between like the beauty of sound or the beauty of words and rhythm and music in poetry versus the subjects being a lot heavier. And so that's something that I've always been inspired by, and I think Deftones captures that really well. So that's my ode to them. Is the next book's going to be called Tempest, and that's named after a Deftones song.
That's not from their White Pony album, is it?
No, it's from their Koi no Yokan album. I think I just butchered the title pronunciation, but the album that has Leathers on it and What Happened to You, those are some of my favorite songs of theirs. That one was more recent of their albums, but one of my favorites. Yeah.
Well, there you go, folks. Sounds like Brian just gave us a exclusive reveal of the next title that he's working on. So there you go. And yeah, wow. We got some heavier, well, maybe not darker stuff, but like heavier stuff to really focus on. And I bet it'll be great because, like I said, Ryan's writing is really unique, I will say, from reading what I've read so far. And he definitely has a way of capturing a nice picture of some stuff that's going on, whether it be in like a dedication to one of its favorite horror films or something. And I can only imagine what this heavier stuff is gonna be like, because I can't really quite say yet. So I don't know. Haven't seen it yet, and nobody had, from what I know. So
no. Not yet.
Yeah, exactly. Not yet. But Ryan, before I let you go, is there anything else that you'd like to share or promote or mention that I didn't say that may be worth sharing about Haunt or anything at all?
The only thing I'll say is that it's available on my website, and it's called nothingpeak.com. Also named after one of the poems in Haunt. So
yes,
you'll know what I mean when you get to that part of the book, if you haven't already.
I think that's the one that was numbered, isn't it?
Yeah, that is. Yeah.
Then yep, I did get to that part.
Yeah, you can follow me on there, and that's all my updates are. All my social media is on there, so if anyone wants to follow and see when I update for my next book, hopefully will be soon, but it's been a little quiet lately, but I've been hard at work.
Awesome, Ryan. Well, I appreciate your time, and if this does go up around October, it's been a spooky pleasure of chatting with you. If this goes up beforehand, well, people, I guess this should be a nice little surprise, little trick-or-treat type of thing for you all for the taste of the fall holidays before October rolls around the corner. And it'll be just in time to scare your little monsters underneath your bed away and hopefully run to the closet, because that's where Naughty with the boys go. So and yes, I did read that one too. But Ryan, thank you so much again for your time. It was a pleasure, and hopefully, sometime down the road again, we can talk more about horror or something horror related, or maybe not even horror. Maybe we can just shoot the, shoot the chat about something else. Who knows?
Yeah, no, definitely. I appreciate you having me on. It was definitely a pleasure, and I love talking about horror and writing. So it's great. It was great to geek out a little bit with you.
Well, I'm glad because like I said, I feel like an idiot, so I didn't reach out, and it sounds like you are almost thinking the same way with, like you said, I think it was off the air, maybe it was off the air, but just in case you were saying like, it's like you're promoting other people's stuff and not your own. It's just like, oh God, not like it's a bad thing that you're trying to promote other people's stuff, but you know, it is kind of awkward though when you're trying to promote your own stuff because you don't want to like overkill or oversell your stuff too.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's something I encourage other people to do, but it's easier said than done.
Oh yes. So once again, thank you, Ryan, for your time. For everybody else, check out Ryan's work, nothingpeak.com, where all the links and social media are. There will be links in the description below. And until next time, everybody, don't go creeping into weird places all by yourself, because you know what? You just never know what is working for you in those shadows to get dragged down into the depth below, and you will just burn for all eternity, for all I know. So on that note, have a wonderful evening and stay scary.